The process of the nitrogen cycle consists of the following steps: nitrogen fixation, nitrification, assimilation, ammonification, and denitrification. The initial step of the nitrogen cycle is the nitrogen fixation process. Here, atmospheric nitrogen, primarily available in an inert form, is converted into the usable form ammonia, essential for agriculture as it is used as fertilizer. The entire process of nitrogen fixation is completed by symbiotic bacteria that consists of a nitrogenase enzyme. Next is nitrification, the microbial process by which reduced nitrogen compounds are sequentially oxidized to nitrite and nitrate by the presence of bacteria in the soil. Nitrites are formed by the oxidation of ammonia with the help of Nitrosomonas bacteria species. Later, the produced nitrites are converted into nitrates by Nitrobacter. After that is the assimilation process, the process by which plants and animals incorporate the nitrate and ammonia formed through nitrogen fixation and nitrification. Plants take up these forms of nitrogen through their roots and incorporate them into plant proteins and nucleic acids. This way, it enters the food web when the primary consumers eat the plants. When plants or animals die, the nitrogen present in the organic matter is released back into the soil through the ammonification process. The decomposers, namely bacteria or fungi present in the soil, convert the organic matter back into ammonia. This process of decomposition produces ammonia, which is further used for other biological processes. Finally, we have denitrification, in which the nitrogen compounds make their way back into the atmosphere by converting nitrate into gaseous nitrogen. This process of the nitrogen cycle is the final stage in the absence of oxygen. In our world today, humans are overloading ecosystems with nitrogen through the burning of fossil fuels and an increase in nitrogen-producing industrial and agricultural activities. This in turn increases the vulnerability of biodiversity, food security, human health, and water quality. The strongest direct effect of an altered nitrogen cycle is through emissions of nitrous oxide, a long-lived and potent greenhouse gas that is increasing steadily in the atmosphere. Globally, agriculture has accounted for most of the atmospheric rise in nitrous oxide. Nitrogen is also cycled by human activities such as the combustion of fuels and the use of nitrogen fertilizers, contributing to environmental problems such as the formation of coastal, low-oxygen dead zones in marine ecosystems. The fertilizers containing nitrogen are washed away in lakes and rivers and result in nitrification. The nitrogen-containing compounds fall into the ocean as sediments get compressed over time and form sedimentary rocks. Increased available nitrogen stimulates the uptake of carbon dioxide by plants, the release of methane from wetland soils, and the production of nitrous oxide by soil microbes. Excess reactive nitrogen also has multiple indirect effects that simultaneously amplify and mitigate changes in climate. Changes in ozone and organic aerosols are short-lived, whereas the changes in carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide have persistent impacts on the atmosphere. On the topic of food security, the nitrogen cycle has been dramatically altered by human activity, especially by the use of nitrogen fertilizers, which have increased agricultural production over the past half-century. The agricultural use of reactive nitrogen is strongly linked to plant growth and hence global food security. However, this disrupts the nitrogen cycle and leads to eutrophication of freshwater, global warming, smog, acid rain, ozone depletion, coastal dead zones, and biodiversity loss. Reactive nitrogen is released in each stage of the food life cycle, including production, transportation, processing, retail storage, cooking, and wastage. As much as 80% of the nitrogen input into edible and fodder crops is lost to the environment on its journey to its destination. Although it is invisible as we enjoy our food, this lost nitrogen pollutes the air, the soil, and the waterways of the world. This invisibility is a huge barrier to sustainable nitrogen management. A nitrogen footprint makes these links visible and quantifiable. We can see which countries are polluted through the food trade and which food items are heavy polluters. Livestock products, red meats in particular, and vegetables tend to have high footprints.
Human health. Burning fossil fuels, application of nitrogen-based fertilizers, and other activities can dramatically increase the amount of biologically available nitrogen in an ecosystem. Nitrogen availability often limits the primary productivity of many ecosystems. Large changes in the availability of nitrogen can lead to severe alterations of the nitrogen cycle in the both aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. Much of the nitrogen applied to agricultural and urban areas ultimately enters rivers and nearshore coastal systems. In nearshore marine systems, increase in nitrogen can often lead to anoxia or hypoxia, altered biodiversity, changes in food web structure, and general habitat degradation. Even without such economically catastrophic effects, the addition of nitrogen can lead to changes in biodiversity and species composition that may lead to changes in overall ecosystem function. As human populations continue to increase, the consequences of human activities continue to threaten our resources and have already significantly altered the global nitrogen cycle. Water quality. Dinitrogen is the most abundant nitrogen in seawater, but only accessible by nitrogen-fixing microbes. Dinitrification and nitrification are both regulated by oxygen concentrations and potentially produce nitrous oxide. Microorganisms mainly mediate the redox transformations of nitrogen, changing the concentrations of nitrogen compounds in the environment. The major sources of fixed nitrogen for the ocean are biological nitrogen gas fixation and atmospheric deposition, while the major sinks are dinitrification and anaerobic ammonium oxidation. Gruber and Galloway, 2008. Nitrogen is a key element for life in the oceans. It controls primary productivity in many parts of the global ocean, consequently playing a crucial role in the uptake of atmospheric carbon dioxide. The nitrogen cycle maintains the functioning of marine ecosystems and will be a crucial component in how the ocean responds to global environmental change. Elevated atmospheric carbon dioxide acidifies seawater, decreasing pH-dependent nitrogen cycling process such as nitrification and enhancing nitrogen gas fixation. Increases in nitrogen in aquatic systems can lead to increased acidification in freshwater ecosystems. As individuals and students, we can alleviate these problems by these following factors: raising awareness through enlightening and encouraging. Enlighten consumers, farmers, restaurant owners, retailers, and food processors on how their actions, such as the use of nitrogen fertilizers, transport, process, and retail of foods, contribute to nitrogen pollution. Encourage them to reduce their footprint by replacing fossil fuels with alternative energy sources that emit less reactive nitrogen or adopt energy efficient technologies. We can reduce our nitrogen footprint in a simple ways such as buying foods on sustainable farms. Reducing food waste and water consumption to lessen water treatment, lessening meat consumption, and conserving energy in our own homes. Additionally, we could collectively call out big industrial companies to reduce or stop burning fossil fuels, and also address our concerns to policymakers to make real solutions.